as the people I grew up with in the projects. Despite the fact that we all yearn for a heavenly kingdom with gold streets and pearl gates, and that we knew our Heavenly Father was rich beyond comprehension, we still gravitated towards poverty like a tick on a dog's behind. We actually created doctrines to enshrine poverty as if it was the pinnacle of some spiritual enlightenment, the Mount Rushmore of Christianity. We made Jesus poor, forgetting that he was the architect of heaven and the creator of the earth. We viewed his disciples as homeless transients, wandering from village to village, spreading the news of sacrifice and piety, and eking out a mere existence from a few coins dropped in an offering by a widow or two. Paul's exhortation to his beloved Timothy was inscribed in the halls of our conscience, like a thundering voice from God echoing from some holy mountain. For the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil, and some by longing for it have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. It's not that we did not know that there were other scriptures, that is. It is just that we whispered them in dark corners and secret dialogues with only our trusted friends. Then, every once in a while, it would happen. A close comrade would break ranks with the righteous and set sail into the treacherous waters of wealth or riches. We would watch as his or her soul was carried out to sea, a tiny boat disappearing on a distant horizon, never to return again. I got married 2 years after I was saved, and I carried my poverty prejudice with me into my marriage. Kathy and I worked hard and eventually owned 9 businesses. Several of them were very successful, but I determined that we would never get lost in the sea of prosperity. We anchored our souls to the shore of sacrifice and stayed there for 22 long years. I also etched these values deep in the hearts of my 4 children, instilling in them the noble virtues of sacrifice and piety. I warned them of the dangers of wealth, recounting the stories of those who dared to hoist their anchors and lose sight of the safe shores of poverty and small thinking. We left the business world and moved out of the mountains to Redding, California, where Kathy and I became pastors at Bethel Church. A few months passed without any significant change in my heart, at least that I was aware of. Then suddenly, it all happened. My poverty spirit crashed on the shores of adversity, and my tiny boat of small thinking began to break apart, torn by wave after wave of revelation. The scriptures that used to be my safety net were now ripping under the weight of exponential increase. I scurried around in panic, trying desperately to mend my broken nets of poverty, but they simply would not carry the load of prosperity that was being charged to our account. We were becoming the very ones we had warned people about, and it scared the heck out of me. The other scriptures that we had uttered in secret with just a few friends, were now being shouted in public podiums, in classrooms, and on social platforms. It was our coming out party, but we were not the ones throwing the party. God was. We were being financially blessed to the point that it was becoming ridiculous, even embarrassing at times. I really had 2 primary fears. First, I worried that we would be thought of like those guys who abused the faith message and seemed to measure their spirituality by the stuff they owned. I certainly never wanted to measure my spirituality, or anyone else's for that matter, by what they owned. The truth be known, I never had enough to be tempted to do that. Second, I was concerned that people would think that we were mismanaging the money they donated to our ministries and were using it for our personal gain. We had lived very modestly our entire life, primarily because there was no other option. There simply had never been enough money to do much more than meet our basic needs. Then suddenly, thousands of dollars began to pour in from a number of different sources, from real estate deals to book sales, and from teaching materials to conference offerings. Thousands of dollars found their way into our bank accounts. Soon we were giving away about half of our profits, and there was still enough left over to live in abundance. The whole thing came to a climax in May of 2016 when a man I had never met before insisted on paying off my house to the tune of $487,000. I'll recount that story for you in Chapter 6. The payoff of our house was the final straw for me. I saw it as a confirming sign from God, and I was compelled to tell the world what the Lord was revealing to us about wealth. I felt like one of the 4 lepers who discovered a feast in the midst of a severe famine in the city of Samaria. In the middle of feasting at the banquet table left behind by the fleeing enemy, the lepers said to one another,